Years of pandemic lockdowns are over, but things are only getting worse for China. And this year promises to be particularly bad. Welcome to China Uncensored. I'm Chris Chappell. The Chinese Communist Party is running out of time to save the Chinese economy. According to a former head of the International Monetary Fund's China division, newly released economic data portend a treacherous period ahead for the Chinese economy. Yeah, it's bad. The Communist Party is now only delaying the inevitable. I'll tell you what the CCP is doing in just a minute, but new official data is already showing the Chinese economy is cratering. And remember, since the Communist Party always cooks the economic numbers to make things look better, the fact that even their fake data looks bad shows just how bad things really are. China's National Bureau of Statistics released new data about China's Consumer Price Index, or CPI. CPI is the change in prices paid by consumers for goods and services. It's a really big indicator of how an economy is doing, because if people are paying a lot more for basic necessities like food, things aren't good. Well, China's CPI suffered the steepest fall in more than 14 years. There's also been some other new changes that make the situation even more dire. I'll get to that in a moment. But before you start celebrating that this could be the end of the Chinese Communist Party, there's a good chance China's economic collapse will have devastating worldwide effects. The expert I mentioned earlier also says China's deflation could also impinge on the world economy if it means that China, rather than serving as an engine of global growth, counts on demand from the rest of the world to revive its economy. I'll tell you more after this quick commercial break. Welcome back. So I just talked about some of the major new signs China's economy is headed into troubled waters. That's not even including a $7 trillion stock market crash. Basically, it's been bad for a while, and the latest indicators show everything the Communist Party has been doing to stop the downward trend hasn't worked, and the rest of the world is taking note. By next year, the US may overtake China as Germany's largest trading partner, which is huge. Germany is a major player in the EU. China used its economic leverage in Germany under former Chancellor Merkel to set the agenda in the EU. Without that, China's control over Europe dramatically weakens. The stock market index compiler MSCI has also removed 66 companies from its China index as things get worse. So right now there's a situation where both internal demand in China, marked by the CPI I mentioned earlier, is down, and international demand for Chinese goods is also down. The point I want you to understand is that this is only going to get worse, and the Communist Party has no good solutions. One way they'll likely try to increase exports is by making Chinese goods cheaper. But that will only make other countries angry because they can't compete with artificially cheap Chinese goods. The dumping of Chinese goods abroad, however, could incur more probes and sanctions by other countries and raise trade tensions. Basically, the Chinese government is going to start running out of money, especially at the local level. Local governments are already facing a $23 trillion debt crisis. According to Sino Insider, a China political risk consultancy, the CCP can technically postpone the explosion of the local government debt crisis and its fiscal problems by continuously issuing bonds and hoping that the massive debts will wither down over an extended period of time. Except time is something the CCP doesn't have. China is facing a looming demographic crisis, where very soon there won't be enough young people to support the aging population. That's the result of the party forcing abortions and sterilizations on people for decades under the one-child policy. And the rest of the world is also taking a harder and harder stance against the Chinese regime. So the tried and true method of getting foreign investment to cover up the party's economic woes won't work anymore. International economic woes will also mean no quarter for the CCP. Both the UK and Japan fell into a recession at the end of last year, which will mean even less demand for Chinese goods, which means lowered prices and dumping and more sanctions. It's a downward spiral that authoritarian regimes are doomed to repeat, because the CCP will get desperate, and resort to more authoritarian measures that will actually hurt the Chinese economy more. Now, I don't know when the Chinese Communist Party will collapse, but for decades, they've been kicking the can down the road to deal with economic problems. And it's looking like they've run out of road. Communism has done a lot to destroy society, not just in China, but around the world. And I've got a video I want to show you about that. But first, this show would not be possible without support from viewers like you. Go to patreon.com/China Uncensored. All it takes is $1 an episode. We make about 18 a month, and if that's too much money for you, you could always set a monthly limit of $1. So you'd be supporting China Uncensored for only $1 a month. So much great entertainment for just $1. What a deal. And as a thank you, I might answer your question at the end of an episode. And today's comes from Old Jarhead. I'm a little nervous about all these young military-aged men, but then I remember there's a shortage of women in China. Not wanting to die for the CCP and wanting a wife could be part of the reason they're coming here. Could is the operative word. I'm keeping my ammo dry just in case. Now, that's a great point, Old Jarhead. We know that there's been a huge influx of Chinese illegally crossing the U.S. southern border, and a lot of them are military-aged men. So obviously this is concerning. But for many Chinese now, it's very clear that China is in trouble and it's the CCP's fault. Regardless of why these individuals are crossing the border, when they see how much better things are in the U.S., and yes, maybe even find themselves a wife, the CCP might find more and more Chinese people choosing to align themselves with the U.S. rather than China. That's why the party greatly restricts Chinese citizens' ability to travel and emigrate to other countries, and makes it difficult to get money out of China. They know that if people had the choice, they wouldn't choose the Communist Party. Thanks for your support, Old Jarhead. And now that video I wanted to show you. We live in a society where everything is sexualized. What are the consequences? Well, that might be something YouTube would consider too controversial to talk about, which is why I'm hiding that conversation in gaming content. Check out the latest episode, The Pitfalls of Sexual Desire, according to Doki Doki Literature Club. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. See you next time.